It's launch day here of our 2025 Food and Beverage report here at the Independent Hotel Show in London. I'm doing a keynote to talk all through the data, and then I'm joining a panel where we talk about the outlook of F&B with two hoteliers, and we talk through some of the solutions. Can't wait to show you more in this video, so let's go see it. Today's a pivotal day for us at Auden Hospitality because we brought out our second annual report, which is our 2025 Food and Beverage report. What we do with our report is we collaborate with Hotstats, who I'm sure many of you know, many of you use across your hotels, and we take the data that sits within their platform for the UK and the US, and we build up the outlook of how the UK and the US is performing, and then we add some narrative around why that's happening from speaking with clients that we're working with, we're speaking with other hoteliers, and then there's some of the solutions at the end and that we're working with some of our clients of how we're implementing change into food and beverage practices. I grew up in hotels, 15 years working in five-star market, and in 2015 I realised I didn't want to work in hotels anymore because I didn't want to keep going up the chain, I wanted to work in food and beverage. But in 2022, I did the same thing that I did in hotels. I decided to leave restaurants and I wanted to bring what I'd learned in my 7 years in restaurants back to hotels because I just thought there was a real opportunity to think differently about food and beverage and bring a different perspective into how we've been doing food and beverage for so long in hotels. The reason we won these 3 restaurants in London is we want to understand what's happening in the market. We want to understand what's happening in food and beverage, and we want to understand what's happening on the high street. So to set the scene of what's come out of the report, F&B impact remains, it's about 20% of total hotel F&B revenue, you'll see that shortly, so it's still a huge contributor to F&B. There's a stat from the American Hotel Lodging Association that says 65% of people booking hotels is now driven because of F&B, which is a huge number, but it's not necessarily the F&B in the hotel, it's the F&B locally, and that's one of the changes in consumer habits is they're now finding restaurants on Google Places, they're looking at where the pins are, and they're finding the hotels that sit right in the middle of that cluster of restaurants they want to visit. And then labour cost, as all of you know, I don't have to preach to the preachers here, labour cost is now over 50% of F&B revenue. So the first stat that I want to show is just the consistency that we talked about. But you'll see how consistent it is. Now this data is taken on a rolling 12 months basis from August to July. So when you see here, the green is 24-25, the black is 23-24, and the grey is 22-23. You'll see how incredibly consistent it is across the board. And then as a percentage of revenue, again, you'll see very consistent. Like forecasting now should be fairly easy on the main because we're seeing the same things happening year after year after year. As a food mix, one thing that is happening, you guys will probably all say the same, we're seeing it in our restaurants. Beverage is on the decline, food is taking its place. Food has become so much more important to the revenue mix, especially when you start looking at the cost lines. If we start looking at this individually, you'll see that food's slightly up, you'll see that growing. When you look at beverage, we're starting to see some decline, particularly in restaurants. We're seeing it in our restaurants. Wine sales have been pretty consistent. Cocktail sales, alcoholic cocktail sales, we're starting to see dip a little bit. What I did then is I put this against 2019 numbers so you can see the real change in what's happening. So the red is 2019. Events are getting smaller, beverage spend is getting less, so the high profitability lines that we used to have on our P&Ls are now shifting, and the restaurant is becoming more important. But it just shows the stark reality of how much effort now we need to be putting into our venues within our hotels to help bridge some of that gap from C and B. And then when it comes to expenses, what we're seeing across the board through Hotstats is that food cost and cost of sales is now starting to drop slightly. It's starting to become a little bit more predictable. But we haven't taken benefit of that because of the increase in labour cost. The profit, as I said before, profit on average is still positive. We're still doing okay, still fairly consistent. In all the report, there's quite a lot of data. I had 15 minutes, so I've been talking very fast. But you can analyze it in the report. There's also a podcast with Michael Grove from Hotstarts, the CEO. We break down the data, we go through it in a bit more detail, it's a bit more concise. And there's the QR code to download the report. I'll leave that on the screen. Food has done well, beverage, people aren't drinking as much. I think that's really clear to see. The new one we opened in St. Christopher's Place. We've underperformed what we thought we would in terms of average check. We've overperformed in revenue, but average check is lower because we're just not getting that beverage sale. People are looking for a much more experiential visit now, and therefore we're starting to now challenge time. So when we're working on projects, we're going, okay, what can we do that means people feel like they can spend their time with us? I go and work in the ham yard quite a bit because it's got the vibe, it's got the energy, but it's quite central. So for me to go there, it's really convenient. Me going back again and again and valuing that time means that I actually get more out of every trip I go to. And that's what we've started seeing more and more with on projects that we're working with, and the report kind of backs that up. I find myself doing it with our restaurants a lot. You'll say, how many covers did you do in the restaurant last night? We'll go, 280 covers. Right, that's brilliant. Great, 280 covers, revenue looks good, we're making a profit. You look at utilization and realize that it's 60% of the total opportunity that you had, and you think that's 40% of opportunity that we can maximize. So it just changes that whole mindset, and that's kind of what these retailers are masters at doing. Those little marginal gains can have a massive impact by just looking a little bit different. We're doing a lot of research to see if we can implement this into our restaurants. So first of all, AI readers in food waste. We're seeing a huge assistance there, but we're really using it to analyze breakfast. So we're teaching it what's coming back off the breakfast buffet at any one time. So before it would have just been on chef's intuition, and we're starting to tailor choice based on what we're wasting the most of. You have two muffins on a buffet, one always comes back, one always gets eaten. Strategically now you can use the data to say, is that the flavour choice, or should we just can it and either put something else on or take the benefit? So I think using it a bit more strategically than the chef's yielding too much beef and it's going in the kitchen bin. There's a lot more to do with it than that. We're looking at how we can now use bots to help on frequently asked questions. So we're now looking at how we can try and automate things like what are your opening times, can I book a table, what's your dietary, have you got gluten-free menus, all these type of bits that don't need a human to interact. We're looking at how we can automate all of those things to make life easier for the teams, so the teams can focus on the people in the restaurant, not the people calling the restaurant. And from there, then obviously we can channel them into the online booking platforms and things like that. So I think my two would be, one, strategically look at food waste, more than just what the chef's kind of cutting off in the kitchen. The second one is how can you automate front of house processes to put people back in front of guests.